Hey guys, it's Simon here with Hobbies and Man once again, and today we're going to be doing another Sword and Sorcery book club video. We're going to be talking about the last story in the Road to the Blackstone Reading Challenge, which is going to be the Blackstone story itself. Now, there is one other story that I should review for the series, but I just don't have access to it, and I'm not going to get a book in time that contains it before the series starts coming out, so I can't get it. But if I eventually get my hands on volume 1 of the best stories of Robert E. Howard, which should have the Valley of the Worm in it, I will try my best to come back and put it in here somewhere so that you guys, if you guys watch this back later, can see the whole experience. But you know, who knows. But yeah, today we're going to be looking at the Blackstone. It was released in November of 1931, and the character that this focuses on is unknown. We never get to see their name. We never get to see them be called anything. However, it's been speculated, and most likely probably is, Conrad. So that's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. I liked it a lot, actually. I think this would be probably a 5 out of 5 in terms of like the writing and the vibe of it. However, I do want to mention that this type of story is pretty simple by our standards nowadays, right? The type of story that this is has been done and told and retold a billion times. Sometimes to the point that it's not even like scary anymore, and I didn't feel scared at all during this story, but I was very engrossed in it, right? So I give it a 5 out of 5 out of like my reading enjoyment. If I were to judge it on like its uniqueness, I would probably say it's not very unique. It's like a 1 or a 1 out of 5 or something. But that's due to the fact that at this point in time, you know, some sort of Kabbalistic ritual behavior around some weird fire thing, like a ritual, is not that scary or interesting because it happens all the time, right? From Scooby-Doo to Outlander, this sort of story that is being told here happens very often, right? So yeah, but the Blackstone is contained in the Horror Stories of Robert E. Howard volume of the Del Rey collection from page 159 to, let's see, page 175. So that's about 16 pages worth of content, and it's pretty good. I like the artwork here quite a bit. I think that it looks really, really fun. And yeah, so it opens up with this little short excerpt of Justin Goffrey's writing, and Justin Goffrey is a fake author. He's a character that Robert E. Howard created, and it's not that interesting. This is just kind of more or less to show you, hey, this is what the character that's narrating the story is mostly talking about when he references this guy, right? So it opens up about this guy, Conrad, let's call him, who tells us in his like self-narrating about how he's heard of the Blackstone and the Nameless Cult, and that he read it in a book by von Jungst, I guess is how you say that name. And then he tells us about the potential origins of the stone, where it might be from, where it could be found, and you know, all of this stuff. Eventually he finds a place, and it's called Strigoi Kavar, or a Strigoi. I'm not really sure how to say it, but basically it's Strigoi and Kavar. And from my delving into power metal and stuff like that, Powerwolf has a song called Armada Strigoi, and I'm pretty sure Strigoi is a Slavic vampire of sorts. However, in this case, it's used to signify witch town or witch city, and that's what Strigoi Kavar means, right? So it's pretty interesting. I like this. It's pretty cool how this kind of ties into like itself, right? I like the narration style. It's very accessible, I guess is the right way to put it, because it's easy to follow. It's not so deep in the weeds that it's annoying, and it doesn't really read like a scholarly paper, even though it is clearly supposed to be some guy's like journal or something, right? And in like the older times that this was written in, that would have probably read more like a textbook nowadays than it would like a journal someone might write, you know, today, right? So yeah, later he has some vacation time, and so he decides to go to Strigoi Kavar to vacation there. And so he gets there, he gets on with the host that is having him in their house for his trip, and he starts talking to them, and he gets information about the place. He hears about the history of this town. Apparently, when the Ottomans were, pushing through this region of the world, I'm not really sure when that was, probably around the same time that, Vlad the Impaler became popular. During the Ottoman conquest of East Europe, the Turkish people, the Sultan, managed to raise this place to the ground, kill all of the original people that lived in this town of Strigoi, and then people came up here and started living in this area. And since they were there, and even before then, there was this weird, mysterious black stone that was just kind of in the mountain over there near the town, right? And it's pretty cool. I actually like this bit of storytelling. This has a more historical fiction lean to it than most of the other stories that I've read so far. And I like that. I think it's cool. I didn't necessarily find myself very attracted with the El Borax, historical fiction story. But this one is historical fiction without being so deep in the weeds or so Indiana Jonesy that it was kind of boring, right? So I like this. I thought it was pretty fun. And he eventually manages to get directions to the stone. So he goes up the mountain, into the forest, through the woods, and he manages to make it to the stone. And the stone is weird. He says that it almost looks like the top of a tower, right? It's not supposed to just exist there like it is. It's not a monument. It's not like an obelisk. It's like a part of a larger structure, but the larger structure is not there. And it's interesting that he mentions that there's writing on this piece, that it used to be polished smooth, but somehow it's clear that it's been hit and tried to be destroyed, but it wasn't able to be destroyed, and it had these glyphs all over it. And he talks about the fact that these glyphs look very similar to glyphs or, drawings or letters that he's seen before in Yucatan, which is pretty interesting because that's completely opposite of where Strigoi would be, right? If this is supposed to be some sort of Slavic area, it might be Poland, or maybe a little bit more east, right? Or maybe south, like Yugoslavia, right? It could be that area. All the way in the Yucatan, it makes no sense for that stuff to be connected, right? And this kind of goes back into that ancient pre-apocalypse or pre-cataclysm, Younger Dryas civilization thing that is pretty popular with a lot of alt history people, right? I found it cool. As a Mexican, I was like, oh, cool. Robert E. Howard wrote about Yucatan. That's awesome. Also, it's kind of interesting because there are some weird stuff like when you look at the Olmecs, that stuff is weird, and they have some odd kind of things going on there, right? So it's kind of interesting. It's pretty cool. Then he comes back to town, and he realizes that it's really creepy and weird, and he talks to this guy about his dreams, who happens to be the nephew of the guy that's his host. And this guy tells him about these dreams. They're very disjointed. They're very weird, and they talk about these giant black monuments and temples and stuff. And then he learns that Strigoi used to be called Suthultan, right? Suthultan, Xuthltan. Now, to me, that sounds like a Nahuatl word, right? Nahuatl being the language of Mesoamericans, right? Like Tenochtitlan or, stuff like that. It sounds like that. But the consonant connection there is very hard. Xuthl. Suthultan is probably the closest I'll get to saying it correctly. And that's pretty cool. Again, another connection to this Yucatan thing. And he learns about this history and the fact that it used to be called this before. And I also thought that this was supposed to be Suthal, and he just misspelled it, but I'm pretty sure it's not. It's supposed to be something different. But Suthal, if I remember correctly, had kind of a similar vibe to it, but Suthal was in a desert area, right? So that's pretty cool. It's an interesting kind of connection there, but they're not similar. They're not the same. Then time passes. It turns out to be Midsummer's Night, which I'm guessing is the summer solstice. And he goes up to the Blackstone area again, and he decides that, he's heard a lot of people say that there's these weird things that happen around the Blackstone on Midsummer's Night, and so he decides to go there at this time. Big mistake. You should not do it, but whatever he did, he didn't actually get to the Blackstone in time. He kind of got close to it, close enough to see it, but not close enough to interact with it, which is actually probably what saved his life, right? And when he gets there, he sees that people are now loitering around this area, this place, and he's not sure if they're real or not, because they look and feel and seem real, but there's no way that these people would exist because they look different from what humans look like nowadays, right? Or it looked at the time of the writing, right? Which would still be what humans look like nowadays. He says that they had more pronounced brow ridges and they were squatter and bulkier. So he's kind of describing Neanderthal type people, right? And he says that there's a sensual brutishness to them, which is kind of interesting. It's an odd phrase, but I think I understand what he's trying to say. And he's memorized by them. He notices that there is a young naked woman. There is a man-beast thing, a man wearing this loincloth and this wolf head on top of him, and you can't really see where the body of the wolf ends and the body of the man begins. It's all kind of muddled there. And this reminded me of Cernunnos, the Celtic god, who's also kind of the same as Pan, right? And a baby. And this baby is kind of out of place. It's there, sitting there and not doing anything, but it's there and it's kind of crazy, right? And so they start doing this savage ritual dance / like, I wouldn't call it like an orgy or a sex party or anything like that, but there is a certain element of like submission and domination through the ritual that they're doing, right? The wolf man beats the woman in a ritualistic manner with a cane, and they do this and he's enthralled, and eventually they reach a crescendo. The woman prostrates herself in front of the Blackstone, and then the man grabs the baby and destroys it against the Blackstone. And with the blood of this baby, something happens. Our main character, narrator, faints, and then he wakes up again, I think, and he sees this creature on top of the Blackstone, and it's kind of like a frog, a toad, but it's also kind of not. And he's very unsure about what it is, but he knows for sure that its eyes are deep and mysterious and dark, and they have ancient knowledge to them, right? Like there is a certain godliness, whether it's good or not, or bad, to this creature. And he faints again, and then he wakes later and he sees nothing there anymore, and he rushes back down to the town, and he makes it just in time to kind of act like he just woke up, and so people don't know that he was out there, which is probably good. And then he writes everything down. He talks about, the stuff that he saw, and then he eventually falls asleep. He wakes up later, and he can't rationalize his experience. Then suddenly he remembers that there was a lost count that was fighting against the Ottomans. He got some information from this Ottoman guy called Selim. I can't remember his last name. And then he remembers that this guy had information given to him by Selim that was never recovered, but he's in the area where it was. So he goes off and goes crazy and tries to look for it to see what that information was, because it might be related to what he witnessed. And it turns out that he finds the information. He tries to be sneaky about it because he doesn't want people to think he's desecrating an ancient hero of theirs. And he gets this information. And it turns out to be some sort of record accounting in old Turkish. And at this point, I think Turkish had already switched from the Arabic script to the Latin script. Or maybe it was about to, because I can't remember when Ataturk did his revolution and when they modernized Turkey. It might have been in the 1940s. So this is still old Turkish, and it's probably even older than it was, or than it would seem to us now. And he figures out what it says. And it turns out that what the guy Selim describes to the Count is exactly what he saw. And he noticed that the Wolfman thing had a pendant that was missing, or like a necklace that was missing its pendant. And there was a thing that was attached to this message. And it turns out that it's a small idol of this Blackstone creature, this toad god. And it's exactly what would have gone on that necklace. And it's the pendant of that man, of that Wolfman. And so this guy, Conrad, we're guessing, basically got to see a reoccurrence of the last time that these people did their worship to their ancient toad god. And it's really cool. It's very creepy. I really, really enjoyed this story. I thought it was very fun. And now he wonders about what other horrible things lurk in the darkness. And this was great. I really, really like this story. I'm very curious if, this toad god is going to show up in the Blackstone event. I think it would make sense if they did. And I'm curious to see how that's going to be balanced against Tulsa Doom, because Tulsa Doom died or was destroyed or, eradicated from the plane of existence at the end of the first year of the Conan the Barbarian comic book. But he's not really dead, because I don't think that that's how that works for Tulsa Doom, right? So I'm curious to see how this is all going to work. I'm very interested to, finally get to read those stories. And I really like this one. I thought it was really, really fun. I understand why they would use this as a basis for a larger story. I think it's cool. I really like this. But like I said, this sort of, evil summoning ritual thing and our characters seeing it from a distance is a pretty common occurrence in our modern storytelling, right? Like, it's lost its luster. It's not scary or that bad anymore, because we've seen it be good and bad, and it's a very kind of basic pagan, in quotation marks, kind of ritual that we've seen forever. Like I mentioned, I'm pretty sure there's a portion of Outlander where Claire gets to see a woman do this to travel in time, and then I'm pretty sure it's happened at least once in Scooby-Doo, and it's happened in a bunch of other things, right? I mean, even Agatha, all along, right? Agatha Harkness, the new Agatha show from Marvel, has like a scene in the trailer that's kind of like that. So this isn't really anything all that special. Like, the story from a modern context is pretty simple. It's something we've always seen, but Robert E. Howard's writing makes it pretty exciting and very creepy, right? Like, I really enjoyed reading this. It was pretty fun. So yeah, 5 out of 5. This is probably the first one that I've given a 5 out of 5 to, I think. So yeah, there you go. Those are my thoughts on the Blackstone. Let me know what you guys thought about it. Have you guys read it down below? Are you going to read it? Let me know. And thank you guys very much for watching. See you guys later.